Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko ingarangi te whakaparanga mai ngari ko tamaki makaurau. Te whenua tupu. Ko oratia te kāinga. Ke winga nui rāwhiti au e noho ana. Ko Benedict au. Te toto katoa. So, one of the benefits of being in a curriculum where you can pick what subjects you choose to take at higher levels is that you end up usually with a friend group that has quite a diverse range of interests and so a diverse range of subjects taken. One of my mates, he is legitimately brilliant. He takes these maths and science subjects that I know for a fact I could not do. But he has this opinion that's always bothered me a little bit, that his subjects, his STEM subjects, are more difficult and more valuable intrinsically than the subjects I choose to take, which are mostly humanities subjects. Now, the argument that humanities subjects allow you to develop your critical thinking skills, to be able to take context, to take your own opinions, to take the opinions of experts and apply it to a source or a document, and then convey that information through a way that is clear and concise, should be enough of an argument to stop that idea from persisting. And yet it still does persist, and I wanted to find out why. Well, the easiest place to look is the idea that STEM subjects are just intrinsically harder. And on paper, there is an appeal to that idea, because surely we would put the most effort and time into the subjects that are the most difficult. But does the data back that up? Well, the easiest place to look would be at exam results. Pearson EdXL is one of the three main exam providers for the GCSE and A-level course. And helpfully, they have a list of all of the exam results from all of their exam series. And so I went to what at the time of researching was the most recent exam series on their board, the 2024 summer papers, and I had to look at what subjects were the hardest to achieve a 9 in. For those who don't know, a 9 is the hardest grade to achieve at GCSE. Now, even removing the top two subjects, because I personally felt that textile and Greek studies didn't have enough participants taking the exam to be useful data, the highest exam to achieve a 9 in was business studies, which is not a STEM subject. In fact, the only two STEM subjects in that top 10 list for difficulty in achieving a 9 were triple science at 2.5 and ICT at 2.9%. Now, are there outliers? Of course, a subject like further maths only takes students who are already good at maths, so the data is obviously going to be skewed that more students get higher marks. But subjects like physics and chemistry, which you would expect to be harder to get a 9 in with how much respect and reverence they're given in schools, had a 20.5% success rate for achieving a 9 and a 21.8% success rate for achieving a 9, putting them near the bottom when it came to difficulty of subjects to achieve a 9 under the EdXL system. But you know what? Those are high school students. And when you get to my age, they start talking to you about universities and what degrees to get. One of the things you do hear a lot is that you should take a STEM subject as your degree because it's more employable or it's more useful to you. But again, does the data back that up? A labour force survey conducted by the UK government in 2017 found that the rate of employment for students who graduated with a STEM subject degree 1 year out from university was only 1% higher than for humanities degrees. And in fact, 3.5 years out from graduation, it was the other way around. Humanities subjects were more likely to achieve you a place of employment in the UK than STEM subjects. One another statistic, from the same survey conducted the same year over a 6-month period, they found that the places where humanities graduates were getting the most jobs were in the fields of information and communications and finance. And that is massive because those two fields contributed £300 billion to the UK's GDP in 2022. So not only are humanities students finding jobs at a similar rate to STEM graduates, but they are also contributing heavily to nations' GDPs. So the biggest reason that I can think of for why we treat STEM subjects with more reverence is government policy. Heidi Ashton is an associate professor in cultural studies of cultural and creative ecologies at the University of Warwick. And she wrote that over time, the UK government was seeing STEM subjects as more necessities, whereas humanities were being seen as frivolous additions to the curriculum. She explains that this isn't a partisan issue either. Both sides of the political spectrum in the UK follow this idea. She explains that in 2005, the Higher Education Funding Council labelled STEM subjects as strategically important under a Labour government, and then in 2021, when the Conservatives justified funding cuts to humanities subjects in schools, they did it under the name of benefiting the NHS. So why is the policy like this? In 1957, the USSR launched Sputnik 1. For those who don't know, that is the first unmanned satellite into space, and it triggered the space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. In 1958, President Eisenhower responded with the National Defense Education Act, which provided a massive boost to funding for STEM subjects, with the idea being that if you funded STEM subjects in schools, schools would focus more on them, and you'd get more graduates who went into fields like physics, like chemistry, like rocket science, who would then go and join things like NASA to help them benefit in the space race. And evidently it worked because they did win. They put a man on the moon first in 1969. Now, at the same time, in the UK, you have an academic called C.P. Snow, and he gives a lecture called The Two Cultures, where he argues that in the UK, the school curriculum focused, ironically, too heavily on humanities subjects, specifically on Latin and Greek, and that they weren't paying enough attention to sciences, to upcoming fields. So, you have one of the UK's biggest partners putting more and more funding into their STEM subjects, something that the UK did then inevitably follow up with, as I've mentioned. And at the same time, you have the academics in the country saying that there needs to be more of a focus on science. So, as similar policies are enacted in response to Vietnam, in response to the war on terror, in response to the war on Ukraine, is it not possible that these sorts of policies are the main reason that schools put more emphasis on STEM subjects? And the thing that's most frustrating is that it shouldn't be like that, because it shouldn't be a discussion or a debate between STEM or humanities, because ultimately they're working towards the same goal. Humanities subjects help us to understand peoples, cultures, identities, how they form and where we fit into it, while the STEM subjects are here to help explain the world around us, why it's like that, and how we fit into the natural world. If you have a passion for the humanities, I implore you, continue to study it. It is not a waste of your time. It is not a waste of your money. Understanding people, cultures, identities is so critical to the development of a society. If you, more than just formal education, if you have access to art or to literature, engage with it. Think about what the author or the artist is saying. Think about why they are saying it, what is happening around them in the context of why they are saying it. Art shouldn't be the two cultures that C.P. Snow argues for, because art is a hand reaching out to you from whenever and wherever it was created, asking you, do you feel the way that I do? Do you think the way that I do? Are my experiences isolated, or are we connected throughout our societies, throughout who we are? And by studying humanities, by interacting with art in those ways, you are proving that they are not alone. Prove them right. Thank you.